We good to go? أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد. على حب سيدتنا فاطمة الزهراء صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. ولتعجيل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان صلوا على محمد وآل محمد بأعلى الأصوات. اللهم إني أدعوك كما أمرتني فاستجب لي كما وعدتني إنك لا تخلف الميعاد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس يا نور يا قدوس يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك، ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترت وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلت وكم من عثار وقيت وكم من مكروه دفعت وكم من مكروه دفعت وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرت. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفع بعد آمالي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومطالي يا سيدي، فأسألك بعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي، ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري، ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وقل اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك، أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي، فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء، فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك، وخالفت بعض أوامرك، فلك الحجة علي في جميع ذلك، ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا، لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي. يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي، هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي. يا إلهي وسيدي وربي، أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد من طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك، وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك. هيهات، أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيت أو تبعد من أدنيت أو تشرد من آويت أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمت. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي، أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادحا، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعة وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنة. ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكثو، يسير بقاء قصير مدته. فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض يا سيدي. فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين؟ يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها أضج وأبكي؟ لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته؟ فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي. صبرت على عذابك، فكيف أصبر على فراقك؟ وهبني صبرت على حر نارك، فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك؟ أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك؟ فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا، لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين، ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين، يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين. أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته، وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته، وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك، ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك، ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي. فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانا؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفا؟ أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقا؟ أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا ربا؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها؟ هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك، ولا المعروف من فضلك، ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك. فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك، وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك، لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما، وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما، لكنك تقدست أسماؤك، أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين، وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين، وأن تجل ثناؤك. قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما، أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. إلهي وسيدي، فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها، أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمت وكل ذنب أذنبت وكل قبيح أسررت وكل جهل عملت كتمته أو أعلنت أخفيته أو أظهرت وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظي من كل خير تنزل أو إحسان تفضل أو بر تنشر أو رزق تبسط أو ذنب تغفر أو خطأ تستر يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا وبخدمتك موصولا وأعمالي عندك مقبولا حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي قو على خدمتك جوارحي واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في المبادرين وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد ومن كادني فكد واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك وأقربهم منزلة منك وأخصهم زلفة لديك فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجد لي بجودك واعطف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقلني عثرتي، واغفر زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك، وضمنت لهم الإجابة، فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي، وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي، وبلغني مناي، ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي. يا سريع الرضا، يا سريع الرضا، يا سريع الرضا، اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء. يا من اسمه دواء، وذكره شفاء، وطاعته غنان، ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء، وسلاحه البكاء. يا سابغ النعم، يا دافع النقم، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلم، يا عالما لا يعلم، صل على محمد وآل محمد، وافعل بي ما أنت أهله. وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله، وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد بأعلى الأصوات. Sisters and brothers, inshallah, in memory of all of the oppressed Muslimin around the earth, especially our dear sisters and brothers and our lost martyrs in Lebanon, in Palestine, in Yemen, in Syria, and all over the world, but in particular in South Lebanon, amid the recent aggressions of Israel, please, for the lifting of their oppression, inshallah, for a near victory, please recite Surah Al-Fatiha, but before that, a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum jami'an. That is loud. Inshallah, thank you all for coming. Allah yataqabbal kil a'malkum. We have confirmation, quick little announcement that we have confirmation from Sayyid Hassan Razavi from Texas for a second Fatimiyya this year, inshallah. The dates for that Fatimiyya is going to be Friday, November 21st, Saturday, November 22nd, and Sunday, November 23rd, inshallah. We look forward to seeing as many of you here, inshallah, at that program. Currently, we are just waiting for our dear brother Hajj Kauthar to arrive, inshallah, to begin the primary programming for tonight. So before that, inshallah, we're going to listen and bless this great gathering, inshallah, with a recitation of the Holy Quran. And then in that time, inshallah, brother Hajj Kauthar will have arrived. But inshallah, I'll pass it off to our wonderful brother to listen to his amazing and beautiful voice, Samir Hajj Saleh. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام ميم. غلبت الروم في أدنى الأرض وهم من بعد غلبهم سيغلبون في بضع سنين. لله الأمر من قبل ومن بعد ويومئذ يفرح المؤمنون بنصر الله ينصر من يشاء وهو العزيز الرحيم. وعد الله لا يخلف الله وعده ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون ظاهرا من الحياة الدنيا وهم عن الآخرة هم غافلون. أولم يتفكروا في أنفسهم ما خلق الله السماوات والأرض وما بينهما إلا بالحق وأجل مسمى وإن كثيرا من الناس بلقاء ربهم لكافرون. أولم يسيروا في الأرض فينظروا كيف كان عاقبة الذين من قبلهم كانوا أشد منهم قوة وأثاروا الأرض وعمروها أكثر مما عمروها وجاءتهم رسلهم بالبينات فما كان الله ليظلمهم ولكن كانوا أنفسهم يظلمون. ثم كان عاقبة ثم كان عاقبة الذين أساءوا السوء أن كذبوا بآيات الله وكانوا بها يستهزئون. الله يبدأ الخلق ثم يعيده ثم إليه ترجعون. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
he's not gonna go.
راح الحمام شوي.
لا روح جيب القدوة. لا كريم عادي جيب سامر يعملها لحاله. This or do we use that? This or that?
This.
I felt that. Yeah, I don't know how they do it, bro. A lot better than you do. How tall is he?
They can hear you.
Huh?
They can hear you.
I know, man. I'm an expert at the hot mic.
You're gonna hold me as a hostage? What about the cold mic? What about the cold mic?
There's no such thing as a cold mic. What do you mean? Like angle up and down? So what? Oh, there you go.
What is this, bro? Why don't you use that now?
Huh? This works. You'll find out right now. Did you just connect it? Did you just connect it? Oh, there you go. All right. Well, keep in mind, it's for someone shorter than me. Still stuck on you. Oh, it's nothing. All right. يلا go. It's fine. عادي. ما هو لو واحد أقصر مني فبتزبط معه. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد. على حب سيدة نساء العالمين صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. ولتعجيل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان صلوا على محمد وآل محمد بأعلى الأصوات. Thank you so much, sisters and brothers, for being here tonight. Of course, our speaker for tonight requires no introduction. He is one of our most esteemed guides and scholars and members of our community, inshallah. So without further ado, please help me welcome up Brother Dr. Haj Kawthar to enlighten us with his wisdom with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Thank you. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيد الأولين والآخرين وشفيع المذنبين ورحمة للعالمين أبو القاسم محمد. وَلَعْنَةُ أَعْدَائِهِمْ أَجْمَعِينَ إِلَى يَوْمِ الدِّينِ. In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, all praise is due to Him. May peace and blessings be upon His Prophet, the seal of all messengers, the guidance to mankind. May peace and blessings be upon His pure and immaculate family. Please recite a loud salawat. Today I want to speak about a passage in Risalat al-Huquq of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, and it is the section on the right of the child. And let's just get right into this, inshallah. This doesn't need an introduction. I want to talk about this, and because it's a big topic, I'm going to do my best to go quickly, but get all the content in, because I know it's late and it's Thursday night. So the Imam says in this particular hadith in Risalat al-Huquq, and the right of your child is that you know that he is from you and associated to you during these few days in this world. This is the Imam starts off with this particular section about the right of the child. Okay? That it is important for a parent or a person to know that that child, whoever it is from you as parents. As a mother or a father, that child is from you. Well, why is the Imam saying this? It's obvious it's from you. The Imam is not saying this because, oh, you know that you were the one who helped create that child. The Imam is not saying it because of that reason. He's trying to say that, and he's not trying to say that that child is from you because you raised that child, you took care of that child, you're responsible for that child. That's not what the Imam is saying. What the Imam is saying is, and the right of your child is that you know he is from you and associated with you during these few days in this world, that this child is from your akhlaq. Okay? It's not from somebody else's akhlaq, but it is from your akhlaq. It is from your ethics. It is from your manners. It's from who you are as a person. This is very, very important. It's extremely, extremely important. Now, one of the reasons I'm making this subtle point is that many times there's parents, their children grow up, and they always say this. They're like, oh, look at them, they're doing this, and they're doing... Who taught them how to do this? Yes, it's possible, we know in the story of Prophet Nuh alayhi salam that a child can go astray. We know from the stories of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam that a child can go astray. We know that it's possible for children to go astray. That's definitely possible. Society can affect them, their nafs can affect them, many things can affect them. But the first place we look, before we look at all those other places, is we look at ourselves. And the right of the child is that you should know, this is his right, that you know that he is from you, his akhlaq is from you, his manners, his adab is from you, who he is, his personality is from you. That child that wasn't just born in this world and didn't just do whatever he wants. Whatever things we see in that child, it's very important that the child is an ayah for us. If the child went astray, it's an ayah for us to reflect. It's a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to us to contemplate. Why did this child go astray? What did I do? What could I have done better? It's very important. There are no guarantees that a child will turn out good or bad, but this is very important. So I'm going to talk about what are the very specific things that are important in that child rearing. So everybody has an opinion. By the way, everybody has an opinion about child rearing. Okay, everybody has an opinion. You ask people and everyone has opinion. No, you should do this. No, you should do that. No, you should do this. No, you should do that. Everybody thinks they know about child rearing. Well, but we live in a world where everybody thinks they know about everything, right? Everybody has an opinion of everything. You know, it's very interesting. When I was getting my PhD in psychology, I remember when I was having my first child, and when I was having my first child, me and my wife, who he's now 12 years old, I remember thinking, everybody would tell us all these different things about child rearing, and everyone tells you different things. You talk to your relatives, they tell you one thing. You talk to your friends, they tell you one thing. You talk to this person, they tell you one thing. You talk to the uncle in the masjid, they tell you one thing. You talk to the auntie in the masjid, they tell you one thing. You talk to the man on the street, he tells you a different thing. So I said, this just couldn't be, like, it's not possible. How could all these people be correct? So I said, you know, and then people swear by it. They say, no, this is harmful for your child. They're very impassioned by it. No, you can't do that. That's going to hurt your child. Your child's going to be dysfunctional. Your child's going to be this. Your child's going to be that. And you get scared. As parents, we all get scared. So, oh my God, it's going to hurt my child. Okay? But you have all these conflicting opinions. So I said, you know, this couldn't be right. Let me look at the research. So we began to look at the research, the actual research, psychological research on many of these things. And you know which group I found out was right amongst all these groups? Do you guys know? Take a guess. Who said it? None of them. None of them. None of these groups. And this is I'm telling you. 99% of the things in our community, in many communities that people assumed were good for children, the 1% was like, okay, you teach your children how to pray. You teach your children about Ahlul Bayt. All of the rest of the things were just incorrect. I'm not joking with you. And if you don't believe me, I mean, we live in the world of information. Go online and check, just take 50% of the things that people tell you and look for the studies on them. There's either no studies or very little studies, or the studies say the opposite thing. Very few of them are proven. Very few of them are proven, but very few studies in psychology, period, are proven. Anyways, that's another topic. So I said, that's not possible. So I went back and I looked again. I said, oh, it's true. So I went to my teacher and I asked my teacher, I said, you know, I'm looking at these studies and people all say this stuff. And my teacher was a non-Muslim teacher and he was an expert in child psychology. I said, you know, people always tell me that this about kids and that about kids. And he just laughed at me. He looked at me and he said, yeah. And I looked back at him, I said, what do you mean? And he said, yeah, that's just society. Society just makes those assumptions. They think these things are psychologically good or psychologically bad, and it's just the internet, and because people just don't have real information. So I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like, half society or more than half of society says these things. So he said to me, yeah. He says, none of this stuff has studies. I said, are you sure? Like, people swear by this. Right? This is when my child was a baby. When everybody knows your first child, oh my God, you're like, oh my God. If I leave them alone for a couple of minutes, oh my God, am I hurting them? If I do this, am I hurting them? If I do this, will this ruin them? And everybody comes and says, no, you're going to ruin your child. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. None of it was true. Okay, so now let's go back to the hadith. I veered off. And after the speech, inshallah, please, just so we can continue with the speech, inshallah. And the right of your child is that you know that he is from you and is associated with you during these few days in this world, through his good and his bad. So the second sign the Imam gives here is that the child becomes a sign for us to know that we have a very short period in this dunya. Right? The purpose of the child is to remind us of our own mortality, that we are not here for a very long time, that we have a very short period of time to teach our children. And that short period of time to teach our children will be over very soon. And it won't be our entire life. As we know, when children attain 21, as the Prophet ﷺ said, he said, when your child attains 21 and you haven't taught them adab, proper manners, then let them go. Because it's too late. The influence that you'll have on your child will be very, very little. Okay? So then he says, you are answerable with regards to yourself and with regards to him for what has been entrusted to you. So the third important point about this. This is not something, we typically, in parenting, there's kind of two extremes. There's the extreme where people are very, very superly concerned with every detail to a point where they may actually harm their child. And then there's the opposite. On the other side of the spectrum, where people are like, oh, no, it's okay, just forget it. It's all right, I'm just too tired. I'm not going to worry about it. Right? Oh, that's not going to hurt them. If they do that particular thing, what's the big deal? Okay? But in this hadith, the Imam is saying that that we are answerable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for what happens in the raising of our children. We will be accountable to how we raise them. Now, as I said, when I looked at these studies, not everything we do contributes to our child's upbringing. There are some things in society that contribute to our child's upbringing, and there's no guarantee. We see this from history, from the lives of the prophets and the imams, that, alayhim salam, that children can go astray. It's possible. But much of what happens to our child, their khulq, their personality, their disposition, is dependent on the parents. Meaning, what choices they eventually make will be dependent upon us. Because children model us. Okay? They imitate us, they copy us, they act like us, they observe us, they look at us, they listen to us. Now, if we act inappropriately or we're not there, they will mimic that. If a parent isn't there, then you teach a child not to be there. If we discipline a child incorrectly, or we're too harsh on a child, we teach a child to be harsh. This is the one area where there's a ton of psychological research. It's like almost like 100 years of research, and psychology is like 100 years old. There's like 100 years of research. Children model their parents. Right, so I was having this conversation with my wife the other day, and it was about my son, and we were talking about my son's expressions, and she said to me, yeah, he has your expressions. I said, no, he doesn't. She said, of course he does. Even when he's expressing himself, he has your expressions. And then I thought about it, and I said, oh, he does. When he talks, he has my expressions. When he tells a story, he has my expressions. And I realized that he mimics me. So our children, even down to that, they mimic our expressions, how we walk, how we talk. Yeah, there are other factors, but these personality traits are very, very important. Okay, so the Imam says, get through this inshallah. He says, therefore, you shall either receive reward or shall be punished because of this responsibility. Regarding your child's affairs, act like those who during these few days in this world beautify their scroll of deeds by their positive effect on their child. Okay? So, in that world, when we get to that world, we can beautify our deeds here if we have a positive effect on our child. There's a hadith that Prophet Isa alayhi salam was walking by a grave, and in that he passed by very quickly because the person in that grave was being tormented in the grave. And then a year later he passed by again, and he stayed for longer, and they asked him why he did this, and he said, because the son of this man fixed a road for people and gave charity to orphans. So the man was being rewarded in his grave for the action of the child, whether he taught the child to do that or not. Just his example changed that child and made that child do that good deed. The man gets rewarded for that. But the opposite is true as well. If the man shows the child a bad deed or doesn't show him proper ethics and akhlaq, and the child turns out to be bad, then the man would suffer in his grave. So this is a very, very serious thing, right? So as parents, we don't know. We're walking on that very, very thin line. And we have these questions. Am I teaching my children correctly? Okay. So what are some of the rights of those children? Okay, when we talk about the rights of those children, we have a lot of these rights that are the ritual rights, I'm just going to call them. And those rights you all know about. It's the right of your child that, all those things that are mustahab to do. You recite adhan in their ears, you give them a good name. Why do we give them a good name, by the way? We give them a good name because the name has an effect on the personality of the child. It has a very subtle effect. Because that child is called by that name every day. Every single day you call that child by that name, and you're hoping that those words have an effect on their khulq, their disposition. Because think about that, every day you're saying to that child, you're this, you're Muhammad, you're Muhammad, you're Muhammad, you're Ali, you're Fatima, you're Hassan, you're Hassan, you're Hassan. Every day that has an effect on the child's personality. If you give a child a bad name, that would have an effect on their personality too. It doesn't mean they'll absolutely go astray. It doesn't, but it has this tiny little effect. It's a tiny effect. And that tiny effect builds and builds and builds and builds and builds day by day. Think about your children. How many times do you say your child's name? Especially for the mothers. You say your child's name so many times a day. So you're calling your child a beautiful name. You're calling them, you're saying this name to their soul. This is the reason why in the womb we give the child a name. Even if we haven't decided on a name for the child, we give the child a name in the womb. We can change the name, we can alter the name later, but we give the child a name in the womb. Okay? Because that name will have an effect on the child even in their womb. And it's very interesting that the first thing Quran talks about in the womb of the mother, the first thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created is the hearing. So when a person says their child's name, and again, this is also scientifically, this is proven, I don't want to get into all of that, but the hearing is one of the first senses, right? So the child hears that. It's the first thing he begins to hear his name or her name. And this has an effect at the time in the womb. Okay, now let's go a little bit further. For the father, some of the rights of the child is that the father, it becomes very important, it is the responsibility of the father to educate the children. I'll talk about educate in what in a few minutes, but it's the responsibility of the father to, one, educate the child, two, to make sure that the rizq that is brought into the home, meaning the money and things that the father provides in the home, is done in a halal way, because this will have a subtle effect on the child's soul. The child's soul is developing in the womb. So if that comes from somebody that we've cheated, if that comes from something that's not permissible by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we know it's not permissible, and the child eats of that thing, it's going to have an effect on the child. Now, before we say, oh, well, that's God's not just and all that, well, if you give your child poison, it'll have an effect on the child, right? If you give your child something that doesn't taste good, it has an effect on the child. If you give your child, anything you give your child to eat has a material effect, so it also has to have a spiritual effect. It has to have both, logically. So it's not that God is not just, it's just that there are causes in this universe, and so it becomes important to materially take care of the child for the father, and it becomes important to spiritually. This is where the father's responsibility comes. At the time the child is in the womb, is the father's responsibility starts. Okay? For the mother, their responsibility is adhkar, to do recitation of the Quran, to always guard her chastity, to make sure she doesn't view, look, or hear things that would have an effect on her spirituality, because her spirituality has an effect on the child. Okay, so we'll come back to this. He continues. He says, and by their positive effect on their child, and are excused before their Lord because they strive to nurture their child and guarded him well and sought Allah's help for him. So the responsibility of the parent is that they guard their child. Okay, they create that perimeter around their child. It's not acceptable to just say, okay, well, our children, I'm too tired, or I'm just going to be okay with this. I'm not saying being overprotective. We don't need to be overprotective of our children. Our children have to experience the world. But guarding our children, because essentially what we have is we are nurturing something. And that nurturing of something is extremely, extremely important. It's very interesting. You see people, I love to see people who have beautiful gardens. Because I always go to them and say, how do you take care of your garden? Oh, I do this, and I do this, and oh, this plant requires this, and oh, if I give this too much water, this happens, and I have to put plant food in this one, and this is the lemon tree, and this is the this tree, and this is the that tree. And they're so knowledgeable. But you ask them, how long did it take you to learn all of this? Oh, I read this, and I did this, and I found out about this, and I experimented with this, and I did this. And then you ask them, oh, well, how? Or better yet, oh, this is better yet. If you deal with people who like cars, wow, mashallah, I'm not against cars or whatever, or any hobby that somebody has. They know so much about that. Like you can get a person who knows every type of car, every type of way to fix it, every type of accessory, anything you'll ask them about. Or if they have another hobby. But if you ask them about a child, well, what's good for a child? What's not good for a child? Oh, yeah, that's okay. Well, it's like this half interest. And so what the Imam is saying here, it is our responsibility, is important. We have to have interest in it, especially in this country. In this country, it's just not permissible for us to say, okay, well, it'll happen. Public school will raise our children. That's not going to happen. Public school is not interested in raising our children. At least not in the proper way. So it's very important for us to take care of these things. Okay, so he continues, he says, to nurture their child and guarded him well and sought Allah's help for him. So it is the responsibility of the parents to obviously pray for their child and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help their children, to assist with their children in their guidance. And there is no strength except in Allah. Okay, so let's go a couple of steps further. When we talk about these responsibilities that we as parents have towards our children, the first responsibility we have, we mentioned, are these exterior things. But in addition to that, we have the responsibility of teaching our children proper etiquette. So I've mentioned this in my speeches many, many times, and I'm doing it so that we remember it. So etiquette is a very important thing. The child models the parent's behavior. Okay? So the child will look at the parents. How does the parent interact with the mother? How often is the parent with the mother? Does the father speak harshly? Does the father not speak enough? How does the mother react to the father? Does the mother give respect to the father? All of these have a huge, huge effect on that child. Matter of fact, we have a hadith of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad. There's a hadith that says that to refine one's akhlaq, you have to teach them adab, you have to teach them etiquette. Okay? So as parents, a lot of times what we do is we say, okay, I'm going to teach the child salat. I'm going to teach the child fasting. I'm going to teach the child these ritual things. But I'm not going to teach the child how to act. How to act is something that they'll just magically pick up. So children don't pick that up. Actually, children can pick up the salat, and those are responsibilities. We have that as a responsibility. Children can pick that up. But what's very, very important is that they see the etiquette of the parents, how the parents interact with each other, right? And there are a couple important points here I want to mention, okay? The first point is for the fathers. So one of the observations I've had in communities is there's two types of parenting that generally fails with fathers, right? And it was funny. A couple of weeks ago, I gave a lecture on conflict resolution for couples. And when I was giving the lecture, Conflict Resolution for Couples, I brought up the issue of trauma and how people experience trauma. And somebody in the audience had a question. They said, yeah, is there a difference between how males get trauma and how females get trauma? And I said, yeah, there's actually a difference. And they said, well, in your experience, what's the most amount of the trauma that you see amongst males? I said, oh, that's an easy question. The trauma that I see amongst the young males in the community, most of the trauma, probably up to 95% or of higher, is with a harsh father. I always see the males, the same thing happens over and over again. That young male will be 19 years old, 20 years old, 21 years old. And when he asked that question, I answered the question. And so this is the funny thing. The funny thing is a speaker's perspective, right? So you guys are facing this way, but I'm facing towards you. So my perspective is very different in this room. I can see everybody, and I can see everybody's reactions generally, right? So I said this when I said this in this conflict resolution seminar, I said, yeah, that's easy. It's most of the males have trauma from their father. What I noticed is, like, there were 5 wives in the group. They went and they put their hand on their husband's head. Right? So now we might laugh at it, but they probably did that because that trauma played out in their marriage. And then that trauma is going to play out in the kids. Right? So then we took a break, and then I went and I left, and somebody said to me, yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that father comment. Right? So now this is very difficult for men, right? Because men want to raise a son that's going to be responsible, that's going to want to be strong, that's going to want to be intelligent, that's going to want to survive. So as males, what males do and fathers do is we always think of, oh, my child is going to go through the same hardship but I do. Let me prevent him from going through that hardship, and let me just be a little bit harsher on him. So I went through this. I want to prevent him from this, so I'm going to tell him at this age, no, don't do that. Don't. Right? I'm going to be very forceful. So fathers have this struggle, right? And you'll see mothers have the opposite thing. Mothers will be, no, let them go. But fathers are like, no, the world is a tough place. He's going to have to take care of himself one day. He's going to have a job. He's going to have to do this. So fathers struggle with sometimes we're a little too harsh. Now, fathers don't want to be harsh, but fathers have this in the back of their head. Now, if you're a father and you're a male, and we haven't focused on our akhlaq, we're not focusing on our akhlaq, then we transfer all of those issues to our children. And then what happens? That young man is 19, 20, 21 years old. And then he comes to the person in the masjid or the scholar or whoever it is, and he's lost. Okay, the worst thing you can ever see is a 19-year-old man who's completely broken. Okay, I remember talking to one of these young men. One of these young men, he had reached out to me many, many years ago, and he was completely lost. He couldn't get a job. By the way, what this does to young men, so I'm going to tell you what this does to young men, these young men who get broken, because if you break a child, if you break a young boy, he will get broken by the time he gets 9. It doesn't take a long time. It's like, imagine if you're harsh on a young man for about 10 years, 10 or 15 years, you'll break him. You will. I promise you, you will. Okay? This young man came to me, and he came to me because I think his mom, forced him to. This is generally the case. The mom is like, you got to talk to Brother Kauthar, and the boy is like, I don't want to talk to him. And then the mom usually comes to me and they say, can you talk to my son? And I say, sure. And they're like, okay, I don't want to, but he doesn't want to talk to you. All right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell him to come to the masjid. I'm going to tell him I need, and then suddenly I'm going to come and talk to you. And I'm just going to walk away and leave him there. I'm like, okay, do what you want. Yeah. Right? It's because moms care for their sons. They just don't know what to do with young males. So one time, this young man, he wouldn't come to the masjid. He's just like, I don't want to come to the masjid. And I'm not talking to brother so-and-so or Hajj this or Sheikh this. I'm not doing it. So I told his mom, I said, okay, that's okay. Don't worry about it. And she was very, very desperate, and she kept coming to me. I said, okay. Just tell me where he is. I'll meet him anywhere he wants. So I met him at this place, and I sat down with this young man, and I think he was 19 years old, and he had given up on life. He didn't want to work. He didn't want to go to school. He had dropped out of school. He got into a good university. He just dropped out, and he was sitting there in front of me. So we sat there, and as soon as I got there, I said, okay, well, it's nice to meet you. And he said, okay, well, you're not going to change me. I said, okay. So we're just having a conversation. I just want to know about you. That's it. Okay, and we began to talk and talk and talk. And 2 hours later, I said to him, look, you know why your mom asked me to talk to you? And he said, I know why. She wants me to go back to school, and she wants me to keep my job and do this. And I said, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to convince you of anything. And so he kind of looked at me weird. He thought, oh, maybe this is like reverse psychology or something. I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I said, I just came here to talk to you. That's it. Your mom asked me to talk to you. I talked to you. You're going to do whatever you want. It's your life. You have the right to do it. Then he said to me, he looked at me really strange. He goes, then why are you here? And I said, well, I came to talk to you. but I just have one thing to say to you. And he's like, what? I said, I think you're perfectly normal. And when I said this to that young man, he began to weep in front of me. Okay? He began to weep. And I said, I just sat there in front of him, and he's holding back tears. And I said to him, I said, is there anything you want to say? He said, yeah. He said, no one has ever said that to me. Okay? So, but that is given by the Father. That confidence has to be given to a child by the Father. Right? It can't be given by the mother generally. Right? This young man was like, oh, my mom is nagging me. She's telling me, she's making me talk to you. It has to be given by the Father. Now, fathers tend to be like, we as fathers tend to think, okay, confidence is forcing him to do it. No, you go do it. And if you don't do it, you're going to get punished. Okay, we tend to interpret things like that, but that doesn't work. Right? We have a hadith which mentions, please recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Can I go 10 more minutes? Are you guys okay? Okay. So as fathers, we tend to want to force this, and this doesn't work generally. And when I asked this man, I said, no one's ever told you that you were normal, that you were okay. He said, no. And then I asked him, how often do you talk to your father? He says, I don't talk to him. Okay, then I knew. I said, you don't talk to him? He said, I say salam to him, that's it. And then I just go in my room. I said, does he ever come and talk to you? He said, no. I said, okay. I said, look, I think you're a good young man, but you got to make the decisions yourself. Okay. I met with that man maybe 2 or 3 times. And eventually he went back to school. I'm not saying because of my conversation. Eventually he went back to school and he got a job. And he slowly started to do better and better. And that's how important it is for young men to be encouraged, right? We have a hadith of the Imam that says that the way that we discipline, a hadith of Imam Ali alayhi salam says that the way that we discipline is by children is by rewarding for those good deeds that they do. I'm not saying that we don't punish ever, but what I'm saying is that it's very important that when we discipline like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala disciplines us. And how does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala discipline us? Most of the time, if we as parents just think in our life right now of all the sins that we do, all the foolish things that we do as grown adults, and the amount of patience that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has with us, the amount of times He lets things go without reprimanding us immediately. If we do a sin, Allah could punish us immediately. He's all-knowing. He's alim. But He doesn't. He waits for us to realize and then rectify our own actions. And He does things, He puts things in our life to make us realize what to do the right thing. until we rectify our actions. And we get 1 chance, 2 chances, 3 chances, 4 chances. Now, the second thing that I've seen amongst children who have harshness at home is that young people who have a religious parent, a parent who observes religious laws, outwardly religious laws, if you are too harsh with them, they make the assumption that God is like this. Okay? There is something called religious trauma. Okay? And people, many times, they will come to me and they're very religious, young people. They're very well-intentioned. But they'll say, I don't like religious people. I'll say, like, okay, well, why? Well, I don't know. I get triggered by religious people. I said, but you're religious. Yeah, but somebody in the masjid says one little thing, it bothers me. This sister said this to me, this person. I said, but it's just so little. Okay, they're not getting bothered by the person in the masjid. What they're getting bothered by is they're getting bothered by somebody who is religious, who outwardly observes religiosity. But their etiquette and their kindness is harsh. So what that person does is, this harshness creates a bughz, a hatred in the heart, a bughd in the heart of the person towards religion itself. Okay? So most of the questions that I get about religion from people at that young age, it's not about fiqh. It's not about fasting. It's not about praying. It's not about eating. It's not about anything in the masjid. It's not about Imam Hussein. It's not about any of those things. The majority of questions that I get is about God's justice. That is the majority of questions that I get. And I always ask that, it's interesting, somebody came to me, and I'll end with this, and then we'll stop here. Someone came to me and they said that, this is a young person, and she came to me and she said, I have a question about God's justice. I said, okay. And she said, well, I think God isn't just because of this reason and this reason and this reason and this reason. I said, okay. And then she looked at me and she's like, and? I said, okay. So what do you want me to do? And she said, what do you mean, what I want you to do? You should answer my question. I said, I don't know. And she goes, what? And I said, have you asked anybody else this question? She goes, yeah, I asked all these different shuyukh, and they gave me this answer and that answer and this answer. And I said, okay. So what do you want me to do? And she goes, well, I want you to answer the question. I said, why? She goes, because I want to hear your answer. I said, well, what difference does it make? Did you ask Allah for your answer? And she's like, no. I go, then who cares about me? So then I proceeded with her to begin to ask her why she didn't think God was just. Right? And the answer is never a cognitive answer, meaning it's never an intellectual answer. Never. Ever, ever, ever. So many times parents come to me and they're like, oh, my child doesn't believe in God's justice, and they don't believe in this. And of course they don't. Why would they believe in God's justice? If they don't see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's justice in the home, why would they believe that there's a God somewhere that's just to them? And so I said, well, I'm not going to give you the answer. So she said, well, yeah, but you have to. I said, no, not really. I don't. I said, I got a good idea. I said, why don't you go ask a sheikh or somebody like that to give you the answer? And she said, no, I don't want to ask them. I'm asking you. You're supposed to give me an answer. I said, why? So you could go and just say you asked me and you didn't get the answer and not address the real reason why you think that God is unjust? And then she got quiet. And she said, well, why do you think I think God is unjust? I said, I don't know. You tell me. His justice is everywhere. I don't know why you can't see it. I said, who's been unjust to you? I won't tell you the end of this, but it all came out. Okay? So, I could tell stories all night about this. So let's end here, inshallah. We didn't even get into the other parts of this hadith, but this was enough for tonight. Neglectful fathers are a whole nother subject. And neglectful mothers. And harsh mothers. Last thing I'm going to say to the youth, I've been talking to the parents, okay? Last thing I'm going to say to young men, because young men is very important. I don't want to say, I've talked enough to parents, if we're like, stop lecturing us, okay? The thing I want to say to young men is, you may not have a father present. There's some men who don't have fathers present. Those men come to me as well, right? And you're trying to figure out, why isn't my father present? Why isn't he here in my life? And you're trying to figure out, why is God just? Why do I have this particular life? It's important for you to connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes we don't have that father figure. I didn't have my father. I was 12 years old. My father died. And through God's mercy, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided me through many situations. The solution is not to say, well, my father doesn't pay attention to me. My father gave up on me. My father wasn't around there for me. Oh, you know what? Forget it. Nobody's paying attention to it. For young men, it's very easy to do that. I'm telling you, young men, as soon as they get a car, they get some money, they stop coming to the masjid, they say, oh, my father did that to me. It's very easy for a young man to have resentment and to be angry. So I'm talking to you guys, who, if there are people online too, if you're a young man, it's very easy to go down that road. Don't go down that road. The person that you can, the thing, not the person, but that, not even the thing, but that which you can always rely on is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the person that you can always look up to is Imam Ali alayhi salam. If you strengthen your connection with him, then you will find him as a father, as the hadith says. I'll end here. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us, give us the tawfiq to be good parents, to emulate our behavior as the Imam has told us and advised us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow our children to be raised correctly, to give us the proper akhlaq and the proper etiquette, to transmit that to our children so that we raise children who will be in the company of Sahib al-Zaman. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi tahirin.
Assalamu alaikum. You had questions? There was a sister who had a question. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. I'm sorry, go ahead. Who was it? Oh, maybe. Okay, maybe she left. Yes, go ahead.
How do you tell the difference between when your son is
Well, a couple of things. One is it depends on the child's temperament. Are they introverted? Are they extroverted? It depends on their type of behavior. And for a mother, this is going to be very difficult because mothers are always, they're going to try to understand why their son is acting in a certain way. So what I've observed is that many times mothers misinterpret what a young man is actually trying to do. So part of young men need to grow into manhood. And many times I'll get many young men that come to me and they'll be like, you know, my mom is just not letting me, I need to be myself. I need to, and that's okay, moms do that. But it's really important to understand that young men sometimes, they need to become men. It's really important for them to feel like they're going through those rites of passage, and that overprotection on them sometimes can stifle them. What they need at that point, at a certain point in their life, is the guidance of the male. They have to have that, right? And so that's why I get a lot of young men who come to me and they say, yeah, my mom is just, my mom is nagging me, or my mom is like overprotective and I can't do this, and that's just moms caring, right? And that's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created them. And a lot of times I take these young men and I'm just like, yeah, it's just your mom. Just don't worry about it. My mom was like that, your mom's gonna be like that. You're not gonna change the world. Just, it's okay, right? Keep doing what you're doing. We gotta give them encouragement. We gotta give the young males in the community encouragement. But it really has to, we have to have older males, older mentors come in and take that responsibility of giving young men that encouragement and then allowing them to go through their rites of passage. Yes, go ahead. Alhamdulillah. Mm-hmm. Harshness was what? A stick. Oh, okay. Okay. So I get this question a lot. So I'm going to give a more psychological answer to this one. Because so Islam has talked about the harshness piece, but you know, what the specifics are and psychologically, obviously we should not try to hit our children, because even if we leave a red mark, that would be a sin if the child doesn't forgive us. Okay, so putting that aside, hopefully we're not doing that, we're not hitting our children. I get this from a lot of parents, well, oh my God, you don't hit your children? I'm like, yeah, okay. No, never? I'm like, no. I don't know, is there some like requirement to hit? No, there's not, okay? We'll focus on more of trying to fix my character so my son can emulate that character, and that's what we should try to do, but I'll get to the harshness. So there's all these discussions about trauma in our society, right? And today everybody has a trauma, but there is some evidence of that we can hurt our child psychologically. And so what it is all children, we as well go through trauma. It's very difficult being a child. Trauma is just, from an Islamic perspective, it's ibtila, it is hardship. That's it. Let's just leave it at that, it's hardship. And children go through hardship. They have to go to school, they have social pressures, they have all of these things. Sometimes we may get angry at our children, sometimes our children may feel offended or hurt by us. Your child will not get permanently damaged if that happens. Okay? A lot of parents think your child will be absolutely permanently damaged. Oh my God, I screamed at him, or I said this thing to him or her, and the world is, it's not. So psychologically, what happens, where you rupture or you can traumatize somebody, is if a child feels they cannot come back to you, that is when the trauma occurs. So let's say you shout at your child, and let's say it's a mistake, it's not a mistake, whatever it is, that child gets very distressed, okay? The key is this: if that child internally in their brain feels, I cannot go back to my mother, or I cannot go back to my father, they begin to disconnect. So it's very important, even if you discipline, to make sure the child understands that you and the child are a unit. Okay, so the child, remember, the child's a separate person, you're a separate person, but imagine you're in a bubble together. Okay? The moment the child feels they're completely separate from you, that's when that, so there's some theories on this, and some of the psychological theories are if the child feels isolated or alone, or they begin to become scared so that they can't come to you, that's when traumatic experiences kind of register in the memory. Okay? All right, any other questions? All right. Hopefully the lady that was asking the questions, hopefully if anybody sees her, apologize to her. I hope she didn't get upset. She didn't get to ask her question. Please recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum. For real this time. So inshallah, we do have food. We have pizza that's set up. Please let us join together to thank Hajj Kawthar for joining us and for enlightening us across all age groups. Inshallah, let us thank him by reciting a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
دعاء الحجة. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك التوى تأو فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين.